Hi, my name is Levi Stone, and I'm currently finishing out my final undergrad semester at ETSU studying game design. I am currently in senior portfolio, and with that comes the added challenge of a 1-week art test. In the art test, I was appointed to design a concept and level for a 2v2 game that incorporates real design philosophies and professional technique. As soon as I was sent the art test information, I began concepting game ideas. I liked a couple of them, but there was one that stood out to me. Introducing RICOCHET, an alternative sports game where two teams consisting of 2 players each compete by scoring goals via throwing a disc that can bounce off of walls. The disc can be passed to players from the same team or intercepted by the enemy team. The lane-switching, fast-paced, and close-quarters gameplay of RICOCHET enforce replayability for all players. RICOCHET is mainly based in the urban setting of Olana. Olana is populated with city blocks, commercial buildings, apartments, vehicles, food stands, and more. The gameplay of RICOCHET capitalizes on this setting via the suspension of disbelief and having many objects to bounce the disc off of existing in the playable area. With the concept down, I could begin creating a game design document outline using the software Nuclino. This was instrumental in keeping me organized throughout the week and providing a nice roadmap for the design process. Using Nuclino, I was able to categorize the parts of the game pitch and accurately describe every part of the game. Once I had my backbone established within Nuclino, I began studying multiplayer map design philosophies. From casual to competitive, symmetrical to asymmetrical, shooter to sports, I was neck deep in research. I personally enjoyed Bobby Ross's design philosophy, but I had to keep in mind that with this being an alternative sports game, there needed to be balance between the two teams and their routes on the map, but all the while avoiding symmetry where possible. I also started developing a mood board and branding identity for the project to keep myself visually consistent throughout. Here you can see the branding documentation for RICOCHET. I was constantly keeping team compositions in mind. Here you can see 3 main playstyles: meta, offensive, and defensive. In the meta playstyle, there's 1 aggressor and 1 goalie. This is the most balanced and reliable play method. Not only is it valuable to have someone stay back to defend your goal from potential shots being made, but having someone work with them in tandem out in the field to inform can be extremely beneficial. The offensive playstyle serves as 2 aggressors and no goalies. This leaves your team's goal unattended and undefended, yet gives way for incredibly aggressive and difficult to deal with openings for the opposing team. The defensive playstyle has no aggressors but 2 goalies. This provides exponentially increased defense for your team, as it is hard for the enemy team to make clear shots with 2 goalies. When your team has possession of the disc again, you can begin moving forward in any of the other 2 playstyles. Team compositions and playstyles are intended to be switched in and out of on the fly during gameplay. You can read more about these playstyles along with their advantages and disadvantages in the GDD. I compiled everything I had learned and began drawing out the 2D map for RICOCHET. I began by creating flowcharts that would help me keep the progression of the map in mind, and I knew I wanted 3 lanes, each carrying their own gameplay elements. I would then incorporate asymmetrical balance within the map by designing mindful routes that intertwined with the middle lane and into the centerpiece. These flow routes also show how I intended to incorporate explicit, emergent, and intrinsic gameplay. In a game where you compete to score points by ricocheting a disc around the map, I wanted to include a randomness agent, something unpredictable. That materialized in the form of the Bedlam impediment, which roughly translates to the Chaos agent. This geometry rotates in the center of the map as the teams compete, and links the middle lanes directly to the goals. It is well worth noting that although the map seems asymmetrical at a glance, it also incorporates important symmetry where needed for a balanced map design. In order to create equal opportunities for both teams, lots of choices were made while designing City Square. For instance, both teams have at least 1 spawn point on high ground. These spawn points in particular are mirrored on the map from one another. This also means that the cover that extends around the other 2 spawn points are shared amongst both teams as well. This subtle form of mirroring also extends to other elements on the map. The top and bottom lanes both have 1 hard drop-off from high ground to base ground when funneling into the center of the map, and they both have 3 fully functional entries and exits from the center as well. The middle lane was intentionally made relatively the same for both teams in order to enforce the concept of equal opportunity, the main differentiator being the red team's middle lane having access to the top lane, while the blue team's middle lane has access to the bottom lane. This was done in order to create team advantage and disadvantage when aggressors press the goalies in their own environments. A lot went into the design and balancing of lanes, and I implore you to read more about this process in my GDD linked below. It took 2 full days to design the map, with many revisions and altered routes along the way. Once it was finished though, I took it into Unreal Engine 5 to begin blocking it out. Shape language was an important thing I kept in mind as I designed the 3D map. For the purposes of designing this map, I wanted the shape language to guide players to the opposing team's goal. I also wanted to make sure players knew they would have predictable patterns of ricochet when throwing the disc. As you can see in this gameplay visualizer I created in Maya, 45-degree angles are essential to predicting bounce patterns in the middle of gameplay. I began by blocking out the pathing for the player, incorporating low, base, and high ground levels. When that was finished, I began blocking out the barriers and city streets of Olana, the city the level is based in. I paid close attention to maintaining accuracy to the 2D map during this process. During this portion, I also modeled and animated the Bedlam impediment. Here's some of the design philosophy laid out in this infographic for the centerpiece. Here is the original 2D map overview, 3D map overview, and finally, the blocked map overview. I implore you to check out the game design document as it provides much more in-depth information on everything I've covered in this video, as well as some more design techniques and gameplay mechanics not mentioned here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.